I'm still surprised by all this madness that's happening in the East, and in particular in Japan. Just because in Japan crimes are committed rarely, but how the hell is it so accurate? Incident in Inokashira Park. In the morning of April 23, 1994, the cleaner of the Inokashira Park unloaded garbage cans and made a truly terrifying discovery. Opening one of the containers, she noticed a garbage bag, which apparently contained a fish. And no, it's not what's scary. At that time, there were a lot of homeless cats in the park, so the cleaner decided to get this fish and give the homeless animals a chance to eat. But there was one problem. The bag was tied with a thick knot, so strong that she could not open it manually. She took a bamboo stick and tore the package, and then a terrible and nothing-like smell fell on her. The smell was much more unpleasant than rotten fish. The smell was just wild, but the cleaner's curiosity still took the top. It was necessary to see what waste could produce such a smell. She looked in an open bag and saw a human leg there, lying on a pile of another flesh. During further examination, she found inside 2 hands, 2 legs, right shoulder, part of the upper body with ribs, and several more fragments of the human body. Arriving at the scene, investigators studied the contents of the garbage cans in the park. In total, they found 14 separate plastic bags with 27 human fragments scattered in garbage cans with 27 human fragments scattered in garbage cans on the territory of the park at a distance of about 1.5 kilometers. These fragments were about 1/3 of a man's body. All the pieces before the package were placed in small perforated drainage bags. Given that the head was not found, the identification of the victim required some time. The work was complicated by the fact that the one who left his body in the garbage did not spare time to cut off the tip of his fingers with a blade and scratch his palm. 3 days later, the authorities managed to establish his identity thanks to a DNA test and the remains of a thermal fingerprint of the palm. It was Seiichi Kawamura, a first-class architect who worked in a large company and lived very close to the park, a little north of the Inokashira Pond. He did not have only a head, but also almost the entire body. To this day, neither the head nor the body have been found. The remaining part of Kawamura's body was cut into neat 20-centimeter pieces on the 20-centimeter pieces with a regular hand saw and a saw. Strangely, the muscles were neatly cut off, and the authorities believed that the butcher had medical education and most likely was a doctor or a surgeon. After the cut, the pieces were methodically washed and bled. According to Professor Sato, who led the autopsy, there was literally no drop of blood left. The remains had no signs of beatings, there were no signs of poisoning. But the most disturbing thing that Professor Sato found are small traces of internal bleeding in the muscles, which led to the idea that Kawamura was cut while still alive. How did it happen that a successful and unpretentious person suffered such a terrible fate? Here's what we know. On April 21st, 2 days before his remains were found, Kawamura went to a party with colleagues in the area of the station Takadanobaba to celebrate his recent promotion. There, Kawamura sang karaoke and peacefully drank. After the party, he, together with 2 colleagues, sat down on the train to the Kaijatsu station. There they parted, and Kawamura went home alone, while going not the route that is usually. Further, at 12:30 of the same evening, according to eyewitnesses, they saw Kawamura arguing with 2 men near the university. In the afternoon of April 22nd, Kawamura's pregnant wife filed a missing person report because her husband had never been anywhere with a nightgown, and then suddenly, he did not return home. According to the available data, at about 4 a.m. on April 23rd, 2 unknown men were spotted in the park who carried several plastic bags with them. At 11 a.m. that same day, the cleaner found the remains of Kawamura. It was very difficult for detectives to come up with a motive for the murder, because Kawamura had a good reputation and there were no known enemies. Rumors of cults and criminal syndicates began to spread like wildfire, as well as the version that Kawamura was a victim of the collectors of human organs and his missing head and body were sold to whoever pays more. Whatever the motives, almost certainly in the case participated several people. According to Professor Sado, when I saw how the remains were processed and packed, I immediately realized that it could not be done alone. The image comes to mind at least 4 people working on the assembly conveyor. One of them solemnly saws the body to a certain segment by handsaw, another adjusts the size of each piece, the third one washes them in water, and the last one carefully packs them one by one in plastic bags. It seems that all this was happening calmly, in a pre-prepared place. I think that these were people belonging to the radical sect, who were under strong control of consciousness. And this is because any normal person, cutting his fellow man, would feel nausea, headache, and the desire to run away. And these people did not have this. The last version that the authorities considered was that it was a case of mistaken identification. A young street vendor, who was simply called Mr. A in the media, at that time was not far from the park and, according to rumors, was very similar to Seiichi Kawamura. There is very little information on the internet about this Mr. A, but from what I managed to find, it follows that he accidentally intervened in the activities of the intelligence service of one country. According to Mr. A, he noticed a group of Korean street traders who opened stalls without permission next to his legal business. Believing that they are invading his territory, he organized a sabotage and hired a couple of heavyweights to scare them off. But as Mr. A allegedly learned, these Korean street merchants were actually secret North Korean agents, and he simply prevented them from fulfilling their tasks. The next few weeks he spent on the run, moving from hotel to hotel and constantly being tracked by agents, and in the end he ended up near the Inokashira Park. When he saw the photo of Kawamura in the news, he realized that he was the target and that the operatives had taken the architect for him. It remains unclear whether Mr. A was telling the truth or just came up with this whole complex story for his own entertainment. Since there is so little information about Mr. A on the internet, I tend to assume that this is the last one, despite the fact that all friends and acquaintances of Kawamura were thoroughly investigated and his apartment was thoroughly searched. No leads were found. In March 1995, due to the infamous incident with the use of gas sarin in the Tokyo subway, which I will tell about in future videos, many detectives were transferred to other positions. And unfortunately, Kawamura's case has gone to the background. To this day, the criminals remain unidentified. Given that the term of the case was issued back in 2009, the situation is unlikely to change. In 2010, the law on the term of the murder was abolished in Japan, but this applies only to murders committed in 1995 and later. Since the case of Kawamura occurred in 1994, his family will never see justice in relation to what happened to him, even if his killers contact and openly confess in court. But regardless of whether they confess or not, almost certainly somewhere in Japan, there are several people who walk on noisy streets and small alleys, aware of how it is to kill a person alive. And everyone who passes by them, everyone they talk to, has no idea what they did.